unto us in Jesus' name. Chapter 15. It's December 12th. It's 7 p.m. Thursday evening at the Palma home, Huntington Beach, California. Bristol drew a deep breath and answered the door. She smiled. Hey guys, come on in. 4 young men entered the home. Bristol nodded at them. Christina came out of the first floor bedroom, her cane thumping on the hardwood floors. Well, hello there, Banny. I see you've brought your friends. I can't thank you enough that you would all come and help an old lady. No problem, Mrs. Palma, Banny said. We're happy to help. Wonderful. So introduce me, she said sweetly. Well, this is Deuce Perry. Deuce? What a different name. How lovely. Is it a nickname or your real name? Agent Brown smiled as he watched the action from his car. This lady was good. They needed to hire her to come work at Ameritech. No, ma'am. My real name is Albert. I've always hated my name, but my mother named me after her father. Oh, I see. Well, I guess Albert is a bit old-fashioned for young men these days. And how about you? She asked, looking at a boy with red hair. He smiled. Well, they call me Red. Christine laughed merrily. Oh, and I bet that's not your real name either. No, ma'am, my real name is Colin. Oh, that's a lovely name. I used to know a Colin. Colin Simpson. That's not your last name, is it? He smiled patiently at the old woman. No, my last name is Thornton. She frowned. I don't know any Thorntons. She looked at the other boy and smiled. And you, young man, what's your name? He looked at her impatiently. I'm Dax Williams. Oh my, Dax. That is a hip name, isn't it? Is it short for something? No, just Dax. I can't stay long, so I hear you have something heavy you need us to move for you. Oh, yes, I do, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. As a matter of fact, I've baked you all some cookies as a thank you. Well, thanks, Mrs. Palma. You didn't have to do that. We're just happy to help, Banny said. So the safe is up in the attic? Yes, dear. Bristol, can you show much... I'm sorry. Yes, dear. Bristol can show you much easier than me. Bristol, would you take them up to the attic? You know where it is. Sure, she said. Follow me. She led them up to the attic. She wasn't as afraid today as she'd been yesterday. It was the second time she'd been up to the attic today. The first time was with 2 Ameritech agents who wanted to make sure everything was set and ready. When Ameritech had come up with a plan to have Banny call on his friends, and Christina had told them she had an old empty safe in the attic that would require several people to help move, they decided it was a perfect setup. These thieves would not be able to resist getting in on the robbing of this safe. Of course, it didn't have as much money in it as Christina told Banny. As a matter of fact, it didn't have any money in it on Wednesday, but it now had a stash of cash. Soon, Banny, either alone or with his accomplices, would rob this safe. They were only up in the attic about 5 minutes when one of the young men, the one called Red, came running back down and opened the front door. Leaving already? Christina asked, making him stop at the door. No, I just got to get a hand truck out of my car. It's heavier than I thought, he explained. Oh, yes, it's very heavy. A hand truck would be excellent, she said loudly. Outside, Agent Brown, who'd been placing the trackers on the vehicles, quickly slipped behind the neighbor's fence. Red came back inside with the hand truck a minute later and headed back up the stairs to the second floor and then up the smaller set of stairs to the attic. Bristol came down then. I had to get out of their way, she explained. A few minutes later, the guys all came bumping down the stairs slowly, one step at a time. I've decided to put it in my bedroom, so follow me, Christina said as she hurried into her bedroom in the back of the first floor of the old house. She watched as they carefully set the safe in the corner of her bedroom. Dear, it really is dusty, she complained. I guess I'll need to clean it up, maybe even paint it a pretty color. And you know how to open it, right? Banny asked. Oh, yes, dear. I have the combination somewhere around here. It's been a while since I've opened it, though. I'll dig through my papers in my old file and find the combination, and if I can't open it, maybe I can get you to come and help me. Well, that would be fine. Just let me know, he said. You don't want to try right now? Dax asked. Oh, it might take me a few days to find the combination, but you boys have been so sweet to help out an old lady. Will you stay and have some cookies? Well, I really have to go, Dax said. Oh, dear. Then please let me put some cookies in a bag for you all. Please, it will just take a minute. They waited patiently, graciously accepted the bags of cookies, and 3 of them took their leave. Banny stayed behind. He took Bristol's hand. What do you say, you and I snuggle up on the couch and watch a movie? Bristol turned her head away and pretended to sneeze. Oh, my, I've been sneezing all day, excuse me. Bless you, dear, Christina said. I hope you're not getting sick with what your friend Melody had. Are you running a fever yet? Christina asked. I'm not sure, Bristol answered. Oh, my, you are warm, her grandmother said. Bristol sniffed loudly and pretended to sneeze again. Banny frowned and backed away. Well, I guess you need to go to bed and take care of that. Bristol nodded. Probably. So, your friend, is she still sick? Bristol swallowed, not sure what to say. Well, she was at the church today doing some work, Christina said, but she really should stay home because now she's getting other people sick. Christina smiled. Well, I'm going to go in the kitchen and make you some nice tea, Bristol. Would you like some Benoit? He sighed. No, thank you. I guess I'll be heading home. He waited for Mrs. Palmer to go into the kitchen. So, get well, Bristol. We need to spend some time together. I'm missing you. She nodded. By the way, did your friend ever say anything to you about what we talked about yesterday? Bristol nodded. Yeah, she told me she thought you came on to her, and I assured her that she had completely misread the situation. I explained to her that you and I were very close and had been together a long time, and maybe she was so sick that she was slightly delusional. Banny smiled. Good girl. He kissed his fingers and pressed them against her cheek and took his leave. New scene. It is December 13th, Friday, early evening, at the Regent Theater at West End Village, Los Angeles, California. The much-awaited appearance of the stars of The Resurrection of Elijah Beck will be happening very soon, the celebrity interviewer chirped for her unseen audience. Still, we have a treat coming down the red carpet right now. I believe I see the grandparents of Eric Kino, Grandmaster Eric Kino, and his beautiful wife, Shelley Adams Kino. Each of the Kino family members were entering in between other invited celebrities and cast and crew members. The elder Kinos were the first of young Eric's family to do so. They approached and smiled at the interviewer. Hello, Grandmaster Kino and Shelley Kino. Such a pleasure to see you. You as well, Gina, Eric replied kindly. So how excited are you to see your grandson's first movie? We are delighted and grateful for the opportunity to enjoy Eric's endeavors, Eric said. Shelley, you look wonderful. Why do you never age? Shelley laughed. Oh, I do. But following my daughter's protocols really helps me to stay young and strong. What a joy to have her, I'm sure. As a matter of fact, I see her coming down the carpet now. Well, we'll move on and let you speak to her. It's so nice to see you. Enjoy your evening, Gina said. Well, that was quick and easy, Shelley whispered as they moved on. Dr. Kino, someone called from the other side of the blockade on the street, and Jeffy lifted her arm and waved. Gina looked her over as she approached. She looked like a little island girl, long dark hair, gorgeous body, tight, athletic, strong. She wore a simple black velvet gown with a slit up to mid-thigh. It had 1-inch straps at the shoulders. The neckline plunged deep but had a lace insert to keep her modest. She looked no older than 16, but Gina knew she was in her late 20s and had just had a baby, which was not currently evident at all. She was on the arm of a heartthrob dude, her husband, who was wearing the simple black tuxedo very well. Meanwhile, Eric and Shelley smiled as they approached another interviewer. Mr. and Mrs. Kino, hello, Isla August said. Shelley grinned. Isla, how nice to see you. Isn't this just the bomb? Isla said. Is this Breeze doing? Shelley asked. Yes, can you believe it? She told the network that I had more followers than anyone and that if I interview on the red carpet, it guaranteed 20 million views, so here I am. Do you have your questions already? Shelley asked. Of course. Do you have one for us? Yes, ma'am. But first, let me just say that you look stunning in that gold gown. Yes, she does, doesn't she? Eric said. So give me an inside scoop. Does young Eric have plans to make another movie soon? Eric nodded at the question. Well done. Yes, if the storyline is in agreement with his principles. What was his favorite part of making this movie? Shelley answered quickly, well, that's a question to ask him, but he did tell us that he really enjoyed working with his father on this. You know, Ricky did the fight choreography. He also told me that he loved working with the other actors and the director had a good eye, and that bringing the story to life was very rewarding. Thank you so much, Kinos. You're welcome, Isla. Have a good night. They proceeded to make their way into the theater. When Logan and Melody finally made their way down the red carpet, there were screams from the crowd on the street. Logan! Logan Adams, we love you! He smiled and waved. Melody gripped his arm tighter. Oh, I feel so out of place, she said softly. Well, you're not out of place. You're right where you belong, by my side. And Mel, that dress, I mean, wow, you look amazing. You've already said that about 10 times. He shrugged. Well, every time I look at you, I'm overwhelmed. He looked down at her. The white dress was skin-tight. It had long, see-through lace sleeves. The front had a row of tiny pearl buttons, and the first 5 were left open. There was a slit in the dress to mid-thigh, showing off one gorgeous, shapely, tanned leg. You also look like my bride. She giggled. Oh, no. When I get married, it's going to be a big, fluffy, full skirt with petticoats and all. He smiled. I can picture it. Logan! Logan, when is your album coming out? Logan, I love your music. Logan waved again as he and Melody neared the first interviewer. They heard the crowd start chanting, JoJo, JoJo, JoJo. Logan and Melody both smiled because they knew that meant the much-beloved USC quarterback had entered the red carpet. After several other cast members came by, including the youngster who young Eric was sure would be a breakout star, finally, 2 of the Kino Challenge champions came down the red carpet as a foursome. Mark and Bella Adams, and Joey and Breeze Adams. All 4 looking stunning. A few minutes after them, there was a huge buzz as a beautiful girl in a bright pink dress and long dark hair came down the carpet alone. But being alone didn't seem to affect Taylor at all. The crowd cheered and chanted her name, and she jumped up and down in her heels, waving and laughing and smiling. Hey, everyone, she yelled back. I love you, too. Right behind her were people causing a big buzz. Ricky Kino and Brianna Adams. Kino. Bree was stunning as usual. Tonight, she wore a very sparkly midnight blue evening gown, and her husband wore a matching tuxedo. The Kino women always kept their clothing classy and modest, but that didn't mean that they didn't look beautiful and very sexy in their evening dresses. As a matter of fact, Brianna Adams had recently been in a large magazine spread as the most elegant actress. As they neared the first interviewer, Bree drew a deep breath and put her hand to her head. What's wrong, sweetheart? Ricky asked. He stopped walking and stood face to face with his wife and put his hand on her cheek. She looked up into his dark eyes and shook her head. Does it feel hot to you? Hot? No, not really. He put the back of his hand on her forehead. Are you getting sick? I don't know. I suddenly felt so hot and a little dizzy. You want to skip the red carpet? She sighed and shook her head. No, because it will be all over the news tomorrow that the parents of Eric Kino III skipped out. Or they would understand if you're ill. She shook her head. Let's just tough it out. He nodded. Okay, babe. But I got you. Say the word, and I'll scoop you up and carry you out. She giggled. No thanks. And here they are, the much-awaited mother and father of our star. Don't you two look scrumptious, Gina said. Almost as scrumptious as you, Ricky returned, making the woman giggle. Bree smiled at her player husband. After Gina asked the always important question about designers, she asked them how they felt about Eric's choice to go into acting. Bree nodded. Well, Ricky had a long talk with him to make sure Eric was making the choice for the right reasons. Other than that, we support him in any endeavor. Gina pushed the mic toward Ricky. And what were the right reasons? Ricky smiled. It would be easier to say what the wrong reasons would have been, which were money and fame. Those things cannot be your motivation. My son, however, was interested in bringing a good message to the world and in the creation process of bringing that message. As always, Kinos, you are inspirational. So, Ricky, how was it doing the fight choreography for your own son? Easy, because we've been doing that since he was old enough to walk. She laughed. I guess so. Bree smiled. Ricky said over and over during the filming of the movie that young Eric's skills continued to impress him, but what he didn't acknowledge was that he was the one who taught him those skills. Ricky laughed. My sweet wife, always good for the ego. Well, it was so wonderful to see you two and get to speak with you. You too, Gina, Bree said as they moved along to the next interviewer. Coming next was Mitch Madden, the 45-year-old co-star who played young Eric's nemesis in the movie. The seasoned actor received huge accolades as he made his way down the red carpet. He walked with his wife and 10-year-old daughter. After Mitch was the film's director, Jemis Jackson, walking with his girlfriend. The next to come down the red carpet was Lucy Bardot. The crowd went wild for her. She was on the arm of her current boyfriend, who also happened to be a starting guard for the LA Lakers. She was dressed in a barely there red gown that had no back, no shoulders, no midriff, and a plunging neckline. Her interviews centered mostly around her gown designer, her jewelry designer, her shoes, and bag. It was Isla August who asked her the best question, though. Lucy Bardot, I am so excited to get to speak with you. You are stunning. Aw, thank you so much. And welcome to the red carpet, Isla. It's nice to see you here. Isn't it just wonderful? It's fabulous talking to so many amazing people. Lucy, and you are one of them. Lucy's eyes sparkled. I followed your career closely, and you are so amazing. The Girl with No Shoes made me bawl my eyes out every time. An Angel of Mercy terrified me. I've actually seen everything you've done, and I'm amazed every time I see you on screen, and I can't wait to see this one. Lucy laughed. Well, I loved making all of those movies, but I have to say this one has been a highlight. So tell us, Lucy, you're such a seasoned pro. What was it like working with a newbie like young Eric Kino? Lucy smiled sweetly. First, I'd hardly call him a newbie. His family are all pros. But I have to say, I think working with Eric has been the best. He works so hard. He never stops. He's kind and considerate, and he's humble. He treated me like a queen, and well, the guy can kiss. Isla smiled. Well, he's a hunk for sure. Well, I know I'm hogging you, and other people want to speak with you. Thanks so much for sharing with us today. Lucy, I can't wait to see this movie. I'm on pins and needles. Thank you, Isla. Isla smiled as Lucy and her date moved along to speak to other interviewers. There was a murmur in the crowd out on the street, and then some cheering and yelling and applause and whistles. Jordan smoothed her dress and tugged on an errant curl and turned to her handsome fiancé. Do I look okay? He smiled. No, you don't look okay. You look beautiful, he said reverently. She smiled at him. He always said those words so softly and reverently as if he really meant it. I mean, my dress isn't tucked into my underwear or something. He chuckled, walked around her, and stopped by her side. Everything is looking good. He took her hand and tucked it into the crook of his arm. Are you ready? Yes, let's do this, she said brightly. They started down the walk. Eric Kino, someone yelled. He waved his arm and a cheer went up. Camera flashes were almost blinding. Everyone could see why this young man was going to be a star. His tall, muscular build looking amazing in the simple black tuxedo. His black tie had a red accent to coordinate with Jordan's dress. His handsome face, so youthful looking currently, that looked so fierce in the Kino Challenge last month, and had been so battered in a photo from the false arrest. Everyone knowing what he'd been through over the past few months, what he'd had to do, and how young and strong he looked at this moment, it was a recipe for extreme popularity. Beside the attractive young man walked a beautiful girl, what some would consider right now as the luckiest girl in the world. She was tall and slim and athletic and had a beautiful face and the sweetest smile. The public had seen many photos of her, and usually she had her long blonde locks in a ponytail or a messy bun or a braid or a clip. Tonight, however, her hair fell around her shoulders and down her back in long ringlets. She held tight to her man's arm, a look of wonder on her face. Obviously, this type of thing was new to her, which always intrigued the public because they loved Cinderella stories. There was power emanating off the couple as they walked. Eric Kino III had an aura about him, one of power and control. Anyone watching him as he escorted his lady down the red carpet would feel almost intimidated. It was an amazing thing to see and experience. They neared the first interviewer, and Gina was beaming. Hello, hello, Eric, you look amazing. He smiled at her. Hi, Gina. What, this old thing? She laughed and then directed her gaze to Jordan. Hello, Jordan, you are stunning tonight. She smiled sweetly. Thank you so much. Let's just get say let's just get this straight right away. Eric, Jordan is your fiancé, correct? Yes, she is, he said reverently. She said yes, and I won't let her go back on that. Gina laughed. Tell us who you're wearing, Jordan. Jordan took a minute to give her all the information she had memorized. So, how are you feeling, Eric, with this being your first film? I feel great. It was an amazing experience making this film. The director is an artist. The cast was amazing. Such pros. They were all very helpful and kind as I figured out this new endeavor. Nobody gave you a hard time? He laughed. Well, only my father. So how was it working with your father? Well, he's a pro. He demands perfection, but I'm used to him because he's been my instructor since I was old enough to walk. He's the best, and I'm really grateful to have this first filmmaking experience be with him. The stunt choreography he put together, well, it's the best I've ever seen. So would you work with him again? Of course. I'd be so honored to have him agree to work with me again. Thank you so much, Eric and Jordan. Have a wonderful night. Thank you, Gina, Eric said as he escorted Jordan away. She gripped his arm tighter. Well, that was nerve-wracking. He patted her hand and smiled at her. You did great, babe. I'm so proud to have you with me. I'm so grateful that you're with me. He suddenly came to a halt and turned her and looked into her eyes. I am so grateful. It just hit me how terrible this night would be without the girl I love by my side. Jordan, together, you and I, we're going to do such great things. He suddenly lifted her up and spun her around a few times as she gave a slight squeal, then threw back her head and laughed. He set her down. Sorry, I got carried away. He fixed her hair, took her hand, tucked it back in his arm, and continued down the red carpet. They got to Isla, who was beaming at them. Hello, you two, she said brightly as they neared. Hey, Isla, young Eric said. You know, that's going to be all over the news tomorrow. Eric shrugged. Oh, well, I guess that doesn't bother me. Does it bother you, Jordan? She giggled. Nope, unless they superimpose someone else's face over yours. Isla laughed. It's so nice to see you, Jordan, and you look amazing. Thank you. Isla smiled at young Eric. So here we are. You've come through a lot to get to this moment. How do you feel? I feel blessed. So many things happened this year, so many close calls, but we're all here, and I'm so blessed. And by the way, thank you and all of your followers who prayed for our family this year. For that, I am truly grateful, because prayer warriors are powerful. They are, and we were so blessed for being able to pray for you and your family. She sighed as her eyes moistened. So, I have a question that followers wanted me to ask you. Are you ready? He nodded. Bring it. Many actors don't like watching themselves on the screen. They don't watch their own movies. At a lot of movie premieres, the actors walk the red carpet and then go somewhere else for the actual screening. What do you think about this, and what will you do tonight? And also, do you think it's egotistical to watch your own movie? He gave a short laugh. Well, I have no problem watching myself on screen, and I will sit and watch the movie with my family. Do I think it's egotistical? Not at all. My ego is not involved in my watching myself on screen. If a painter, like my Aunt Breeze, is creating her artwork, she steps back and looks the painting over. She adds a brushstroke here and there until she's satisfied with her work. She has to see her work in order to do that. Or, like my brother JoJo, my cousin, we think of ourselves as brothers, he explained. One of the big things they do after a game is they watch films. That's how they improve. They look at what they did right, and they see what they did wrong and how they can improve. So, I will watch and see ways I can improve. I will watch and learn. My parents will also watch with me and learn and help me to improve. No ego involved. Actually, the not wanting to watch oneself might have a little bit of ego involved. How so? Isla said quickly. Well, it's hard to simply judge everyone, but if someone is uncomfortable seeing themselves on screen, it could be because they feel vulnerable, exposing themselves to the world. That might be a little bit of an ego issue. He shrugged. Just my off-the-cuff response, not meaning to judge anyone. Everyone has different reasons and different issues to deal with. I sure do. But bottom line, I'll watch the movie and I'll learn how to improve. But working with the director and cast of this film, it was an amazing experience. They are real pros, and I think they created an awesome piece of art. Eric Kino III, I am completely fascinated by you. I would love to sit and listen to you answer a million questions. Thank you so much for speaking to us, and you too, Jordan. You guys are such a lovely couple. Thank you, Isla, both Jordan and Eric said at the same time. They moved on to take the small stage. When their faces filled the large monitors, the waiting crowd cheered and began chanting, Kino, Kino, Kino. They were so loud and chanted so long that young Eric came to attention and bowed deeply. Not like a performer takes a bow, but as a martial artist bows to his teacher. When he bowed, the crowd cheered even louder, and Eric rose and tapped his hand against his chest and smiled and waved. They answered a few questions with the MC, stepped down off the stage, went to sign a few autographs and chat with a few people who'd been waiting for hours to see the cast of the movie. Finally, they entered the theater and found their family and seats. Young Eric started to get up and get some water for Jordan, but someone brought them some cold bottled water, then asked if they wanted anything to eat. Young Eric glanced at Jordan with a smile. As much popcorn as you want, he prompted. She giggled. Yes, I'll have some. Eric nodded. A big bucket of popcorn, he said. The young man asked if anyone else in their party needed anything and went to retrieve it. Logan and Melody sat beside Jordan. JoJo and Taylor sat beside young Eric. Oh. Parents, grandparents, uncles, and aunts, along with the Lee and Davis family, sat behind within 3 center rows. Just in front of young Eric was Lucy Bardot and her family and friends, which included Ella Penn, though she was all the way at the end of that row of seats. Young Eric glanced at JoJo. You okay with that? JoJo nodded and even smiled. Sure. I mean, who can blame her trying to get some of this? He joked, motioning toward himself. Young Eric smiled. His brother had a good attitude about it. Ella had pled no contest to a misdemeanor. She was fined and made to do community service, which was ongoing. She'd had to have a meeting with JoJo and had apologized profusely. JoJo said she was pretty humble and sincere and even shed tears. Young Eric also found out that Ella's father was furious with her. He scolded her severely for trying to put him up against the Kinos. She thought that her father was a powerful man, and he would come out on top in any situation, and he'd had to open her eyes. Yes, money talks, but his $100 million fortune was nothing in comparison to the Kinos' assets, and he had no desire to cross them. Once he'd set her straight and opened her eyes, she'd found her humility. The theater lights blinked dim, and young Eric rose from his seat. He leaned down to whisper to Jordan, Be back in a few. They've asked us to take the stage for a minute. Jordan watched young Eric scoot past everyone to the aisle. In the next row, Lucy stood and made her way to the aisle. Young Eric waited on her and escorted her down to the front of the theater. A man with a microphone introduced himself as one of the film's producers. He was applauded. He then introduced the director, handed him the microphone, and stood aside. The director spoke a few words about how great it was to work with this fine group of actors and the fine crew. Next to him was Mitch Madden, the seasoned pro who played the villain. The director asked Mitch to say a few words, and Mitch nodded and was handed a mic. He said a few words, and so I'll keep it short. But I'm glad I have the opportunity to say to these amazing people, the actors standing on stage with me right now, and the actors and crew in the audience, that I've never worked with a finer group of people, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. He nodded and gave a slight bow at the applause. Next to Mitch was the young child actor whose character befriends young Eric's character. The mic was passed to him, and the child was not shy. He smiled. Hi, everyone. I'm Trevor Ross. I'm 10 years old, and I am totally stoked about making this movie. He waited a minute while everyone laughed. It's my first big break, and it was so much fun, and yeah, there were times that I was a little nervous, but Eric always made me feel okay. He even prayed with me a few times to help me calm down. It's been the best experience of my whole life, he beamed. Everyone laughed at that since his life hasn't been very long yet. He handed off his mic and bowed and was applauded. Lucy was handed a microphone. Well, that is hard to follow, but I have to agree with Trevor. It's been the best time making this movie. There's been such a spirit on the set of camaraderie. It's like Everyone, even me, left their egos at home. We worked together so perfectly. The crew was amazing. Making a movie has never been so much fun, and I've made a lot, so I can say that. She turned to Mitch. Right, Mitch? He nodded. Absolutely. She passed her mic to young Eric as the audience applauded her. The theater became ultra quiet. You could have heard a pin drop. Young Eric smiled his gorgeous smile and nodded at everyone. Well, I'm in the same boat with Trevor, he said softly. It's my first big break. He stopped while everyone laughed. I was excited and intrigued to do this project. The writer's message was beautiful. He stopped, asked the man to stand, and everyone applauded the screenwriter. Young Eric smiled and went on. And the rest of you, the director, the camera guys, the crew, the cast, just the best. Real pros. The fight choreographer, I have to say, was also the best. He smiled. No, really, I have to say that. The audience laughed. Truly, though, I'm grateful for this opportunity. I've learned so much, and I promise I will continue to learn and grow. He looked up. Thank you, Father, for this beautiful chance to do your work. He looked back at the audience. And thank you all for your hard work and your kindness to me. Let's watch this. The audience stood and applauded. The 4 actors on stage and the director all took a bow and headed back to their seats. Young Eric saw Lucy to her row, then went to his own seat. Before he sat down, he leaned over to the row behind him and shook his father's hand and blew a kiss to his mother. He took his seat. The theater darkened, and Jordan squeezed Eric's hands. Here we go, 3. I'm so excited. He patted her hand and smiled at her. Afterward, you have to be honest with me. She smiled. I promise. Her eyes got wide as the first scene began, and young Eric ran through a wooded area in the dark, breathing hard. He stumbled and fell face down. An arrow flew into the ground right next to him. He rolled, got up, and ran away. Breathing hard herself, she pressed herself against the seat, biting her lip. New scene. It is now December 13th, 9:30 p.m. Friday evening. The Regent Theater at West End Village, Los Angeles, California. The entire Kino section of family and friends stood in a circle, chattering excitedly about what they'd just seen. Everyone was congratulating young Eric on a job well done. Ricky and Bree hugged their son for a long time, and Bree cried and said he was phenomenal, and Taylor cried too, and the rest of the crowd in the theater dispersed. Many of them headed to the after party, which was at the ballroom of the hotel just across the street. Young Eric and Jordan, Logan and Melody, JoJo and Taylor and Ricky and Bree said goodbye to the rest of the family as they too were headed to the after party. The rest of the family and friends went home to relieve babysitters. At the party, there was a huge spread of food, anything and everything. The young ones chowed down, Ricky too. Bree wasn't feeling well, and she just nibbled. The crowd at the party was raucous, celebrating their accomplishment and each other. Young Eric followed his brother's lead and pulled his girl onto the dance floor and held her close. So, 2-3, what do you think? I mean, honestly, he whispered as they swayed back and forth to the music. She sighed. I think you were amazing. I mean, really. I tried to find something to pick apart so that you know I was being honest, but I couldn't find anything. Your acting skills are good, 3. I mean, one would never know it was your first movie. He nodded. Great direction. Whatever. And the whole movie, it was so well done. It held my interest the entire time. There was no, boring scene. It was all so good. The only part I didn't like was, well, you know. He smiled. That kiss didn't mean a thing. I know. It's just that she knows what it feels like to have your lips on hers, and that kind of bothers me. I'm sorry. How can I make it up to you? By kissing me a million times a day? He chuckled. Challenge accepted. He stopped moving, held her still, lowered his head, and kissed her for a long time. He stopped only because a hand was placed on his shoulder. Eric looked up to see actor Keanu Reeves smiling at him. You're making me jealous. Young Eric chuckled and turned to shake his hand. You did a fantastic job, Eric. Eric sighed. Thank you so much, sir. It means a lot. Sir? Keanu laughed. Young Eric shrugged. I'm just showing respect. Well, you have my respect. Keep up the good work. Maybe we'll work together one day. I would love that. Keanu smiled at Jordan, whose eyes were wide, and he nodded. So this is your beautiful fiancé? Yes, sir, he said proudly. This is Jordan Brooks. Keanu took her hand. It's so nice to meet you. You too, she said softly. They chatted a few seconds and he took his leave, and Eric smiled at her. Are you a little starstruck? She giggled. Maybe. He's so nice and down to earth. I think that's what you said about my parents. Her eyes widened. Oh, that's right. I did. And yet now you think about them just like they're ordinary people. Well, not exactly ordinary, more like extraordinary. You're extraordinary, he said softly. Close to midnight, Ricky and Bree approached. Well, son, we're going to wait until midnight and then we're going to head home. Young Eric nodded. Why wait until midnight? Is it so you can say you partied until the next day? Yeah, that's why, Ricky replied. Jordan smiled because she knew why. So, son, after midnight, you two might want to head home. We have a big day tomorrow, what with a martial arts demo first thing in the morning at the apartments and finishing some things at the church and then Taylor's dance. Young Eric nodded. We are going to head home pretty soon. Good. Attention, everyone, the film director said, speaking into a microphone. Can I get everyone's attention? We have an announcement to make. The room quieted, and I'm going to let one of our local sports stars make the announcement. JoJo Adams. In case some of you don't know, he was USC's quarterback for the past 3 years, a Heisman candidate for 2 of those years, and he is also the cousin of Eric Kino. Let's give him a hand. JoJo stepped forward and took the microphone. He aimed a smile at young Eric. So, cuz, we waited until after midnight to make this announcement for a reason. Everyone, it is now December 14th, which means it's now Eric's birthday. Even more importantly, it's his 21st birthday. He made it to manhood, he said as everyone laughed. Though I have to say there were a few times this year when we thought he wouldn't make it. He stopped and shook his head and got his emotions under control. Eric is like my brother. We're only a few months apart and we've grown up together, and this year, when I thought we'd lost him, well, it was a real test of my faith. But my bro didn't let the bad guys win, thank God, and he came back. He won the Kino Challenge like a pro. He got engaged to a gorgeous girl and is here tonight to celebrate with you all, and I am so grateful for that. Now, today might be his birthday, but he didn't think he was going to have a chance to celebrate because he's got a martial arts demonstration to help with in the morning. And then he's supposed to help work on a little church we've been working to renovate. And then his sister, Taylor, wanted him to come see her perform a dance at school. He thought he was going to get to squeeze in a little birthday dinner with his fiancée, and that would be it. But I was thinking maybe you would all like to help him celebrate and join me in singing happy birthday to Eric. Everyone oohed and awed over the giant cake that was wheeled in, lit up with 21 candles. Bro, come forward so we can all see you as we sing happy birthday to you. Because, Eric, we're all so grateful to have you in our lives. What a gift you are to us. What a gift to your mom and dad, to our family, to your friends, and to this world. Happy birthday, brother. Eric stepped forward and JoJo hugged him, then turned to the crowd and led them in singing happy birthday. Eric blew out the candles and a giant cheer went up. People stepped forward to congratulate him, and he thanked them all profusely. The cake was cut and enjoyed. Eric was hugged and kissed 1,000 times. And finally, Ricky, Bree, and Taylor took their leave. Not long after the rest of the family left. Not long after that, the rest of the family left. And not long after that, young Eric and Jordan made their escape. It was done. Premiere over. With birthday celebrated. The film looking good. He was alive. Jordan was alive. He was so blessed. That is the end of chapter 15.